The Untouchables. Who were they and why they became untouchables? By Baba Sahib Ambedkar. Part 1. Chapter 2. Untouchability among Hindus. 1. In the matter of pollution, there is nothing to distinguish the Hindus from the primitive or ancient peoples. That they recognized pollution is abundantly clear from the Manusmriti. Manu recognizes physical defilement and also notional defilement. Manu treated birth, death, and menstruation as sources of impurity. With regard to death, defilement was very extensive in its range. It followed the rule of consanguinity. Death caused defilement to members of the family of the dead person, technically called sapindas and samanado, samanodaka. Not only included maternal relatives such as maternal uncle, but also remote relatives. It extended even to non-relatives such as 1. Teacher, 2. Teacher's son, 3. Teacher's wife, 4. Pupil, fellow, 5. Fellow, student, 6. Shrotriya, 7. King, 8. Friend, 9. Members of the household, 10. Those who carried the corpse, 11. Those who touched the corpse. Anyone within the range of defilement could not escape it. There were only certain persons who were exempt. In the following verses, Manu names them and specifies the reasons why he exempts them. 93. The taint of impurity does not fall on kings and those engaged in the performance of a vow or of a satra, for the first are seated on the throne of India and the last two are ever pure like Brahman. 94. For a king on the throne of magnanimity, immediate purification is prescribed, and the reason for that is that he is seated there for the protection of his subjects. 95. The same rule applies to the kinsmen of those who have fallen in a riot or a battle, of those who have been killed by lightning or by the king, and for cows and Brahmins, and to those whom the king wishes to be pure in spite of impurity. 96. A king is an incarnation of the 8 guardian deities of the world: the moon, the fire, the sun, the wind, Indra, the lords of wealth and water, Kubera and Varuna, and Yama. 97. Because the king is pervaded by those lords of the world, no impurity is ordained for him, for purity and impurity of mortals is caused and removed by those lords of the world. From this, it is clear that the king, the kinsman of those who have fallen in a noble cause as defined by Manu, and those whom the king chose to exempt were not affected by the normal rules of defilement. Manu's statement that the Brahmin was ever pure must be understood in its usual sense of exalting the Brahmin above everything. It must not be understood to mean that the Brahmin was free from defilement, for he was not. Indeed, besides being defiled by births and deaths, the Brahmin also suffered defilement on grounds which did not affect the non-Brahmins. The Manusmriti is full of taboos and don'ts which affect only the Brahmins and which he must observe, and failure to observe which makes him impure. The idea of defilement in Manu is real and not merely notional, for he makes the food offered by the polluted person unacceptable. Manu also prescribes the period of defilement. It varies. For the death of a sapinda, it is 10 days. For children, 3 days. For fellow students, 1 day. Defilement does not vanish by the mere lapse of the prescribed period. At the end of the period, there must be performed a purificatory ceremony appropriate to the occasion. For the purposes of purification, Manu treats the subject of defilement from 3 aspects: physical defilement, notional or psychological defilement, and ethical defilement. The rule for the purification of ethical defilement, which occurs when a person entertains evil thoughts, are more admonitions and exhortations, but the rites for the removal of notional and physical defilements are the same. They include the use of water, earth, cows, urine, the kusa grass, and ashes are prescribed as purificatory agents for removal of physical impurities caused by the touch of inanimate objects. Water is the chief agent for the removal of notional defilement. It is used in three ways: sipping, bath, and ablution. Later on, Panchagavya became the most important agency for removing notional defilement. It consists of a mixture of the five products of the cow, namely milk, urine, dungs, curds, and butter. In Manu, there is also provision for getting rid of defilement by transmission through a scapegoat, namely by touching the cow or looking at the sun after sipping water. Besides the individual pollution, the Hindus believe also in territorial and communal pollution and purification, very much like the system that prevailed among the early Romans. Every village has an annual jatra. An animal, generally a he buffalo, is purchased on behalf of the village. The animal is taken round the village and is sacrificed. The blood is sprinkled round the village, and towards the end, toe meat is distributed among the villagers. Every Hindu, every Brahmin even, though he may not be a beef eater, is bound to accept his share of the meat. This is not mentioned in any of the Smritis, but it has the sanction of custom, which among the Hindus is so strong that it always overrides law. The end.